Reality therapist perception.
Hello and welcome back to Reactivity TV, which is our weekly podcast where we share our therapist takes to all the trending shows that you are watching right now, that we are watching. And this week we are giving our therapist perspective to Succession, season 4, episode 9, the penultimate episode of the series. Wow. A lot. Mm-hmm. A lot to break down in this episode yet again.
They just keep getting better, and they're giving us so much more juice and stuff to work with here. I'm so excited to talk about this because I've been really enjoying watching and thinking about how and just thinking about my therapist viewpoint of this has been really cool, really interesting.
I know they're giving us a lot to work with.
Yeah. Thanks, Roy fam.
Yes. I mean, so this was a very big episode because finally, we lay Logan to rest. And it was so emotional, so intense. Even the way it was filmed was so reminiscent of the episode where we discover that he died. I mean, it was heavy, another heavy episode where so much is going on. Mm-hmm. What resonated with you? What stuck out to you from your therapist lens?
Well, what I'd really like to point out is how much of the episode was the funeral. And I'm sure you watched this after too, but the after inside the episode part where they talked about the filming of it and how different they had to make it. And I loved learning about that and how just the fact that this was a really big deal. And I think that them having the bulk of this episode be at the funeral really was so relevant and real to the experience of a funeral of somebody really important to somebody. And so, yeah, I think that just the fact that so much was leading up to this, and in real life, when somebody dies, there is so much leading up to that point of the ceremony and the burial. And even if it's just a few days, those few days are exhausting and take so much out of you that it made all that much more sense for this to be so lengthy and so involved as it was.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. Right. I mean, and it's been something we've been hearing about for, 6 episodes really, or something that we've been thinking about. And it's finally come. And I felt exhausted, watching it. And I think it, that's why this show does such a good job. In the same way that in episode 3, when Logan dies, when we talked about that episode, we had both said, we kind of, as the audience, experienced what the kids were experiencing, this denial, and that's, I kind of was feeling that sense of heaviness of the funeral, of having, just not that I've ever been to a funeral to that scale, but going to a funeral of someone in more of a Catholic church kind of setting, the pomp and circumstance that comes along with that. It's so mixed of sad and kind of beautiful and all of that stuff. And I was definitely feeling the feels while watching the funeral and the burial.
Yeah, absolutely. So to get into the funeral a little bit, I mean, what I would like to, talk about in terms of another reality that was so evident was around Roman and his confidence in the beginning of the episode when he's practicing his speech, and even when he's bantering with everybody, he's being very Roman, and it really was funny. It was
sad.
Yeah, that's great. You're not my father. And he kept harping on the pre-grieved thing. I think he just wanted to believe so much that he was past everything that he wasn't ready for what actually hit him. And when it did, right before he's about to give his eulogy, and as he starts to try, he absolutely collapses and just falls apart. And yeah, that was such an honest parallel to grief, as we've been talking about. How can we not keep talking about this? But it is such an honest parallel to that. I'm fine until I'm not. Mm-hmm. And like you and I talk to clients all the time about suppressing emotions and what that does. Like it doesn't make them go away. It just makes them come up when you're not ready for them and you don't want them to. And this was the worst time possible for them to come up. And he thought he had so much control over his emotions that he could get past it, get past the true grief and true sadness that he was really feeling, that he couldn't take it anymore. It was out of his hands at that point. Right. And the more you actually work on bringing up these emotions, processing these emotions when at your time and when you choose to, you're more prepared in these other moments that maybe you actually don't want them to come up. So I found that really, really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, you're so right. It was such an honest moment. It was such a real moment. And I think, as you're saying, like there's so many people that believe that they're okay. Or maybe, I think Roman was in complete denial, but then maybe you see the casket or you get hit with a memory. And then all of a sudden you are just like brought to the reality, to the realization that this person who had such a huge presence in your life is gone. And you can kind of see the kind of wheels coming off the wagon, or whatever the expression is, when Roman's listening to his uncle give his eulogy, and you kind of like see the emotion rising from Roman as, Logan's humanized a little bit, at least at the beginning. And you're right. That's what happens when we suppress emotions, is that they can sneak up on us on the most inopportune time. And he just like couldn't contain it anymore. And yeah, that really stuck out to me a lot. Logan's response to grief. We see him break down. I mean, he's someone who is so skilled at denial, deflecting. I mean, he uses humor in all the ways to kind of manage discomfort, uncomfortable situations. We've seen him laugh things off. And another way, and avoid. And so even when they were like at the cemetery and going into the mausoleum, Roman couldn't go inside. Like he just couldn't even face it. And then he left, couldn't be there. So we see Roman, respond to emotional situations that way. He's not used to being vulnerable or even allowing himself an opportunity to get close to vulnerable. What we do see happen though, when Roman experiences like difficulty or difficult emotions, is that he seeks out masochism, ways that he can experience pain. We see this a couple of episodes ago, after the Living Plus presentation. Kendall sends him a text of something that he edited together that is Logan basically saying, Roman has a micro penis or something like that. And we see Roman like play that on repeat, almost as a way to self-soothe. And then in this week's episode, after being essentially berated by Kendall and being told how he messed up the deal, how his vulnerability essentially ruined everything for himself and potentially the company, what do we see him do? Literally run into an angry mob, seek out getting trampled, getting punched in the face. Like he was seeking that pain. And whether or not they were they were protesting, but like he was antagonizing them, trying to like
bring them on, to make them angry, to make them come at him.
Right. And in a lot of ways, that is what is comfortable to Roman, right? Like that's what he kind of grew up with. We learned throughout the series that Roman got the worst of it, the worst of the abuse, the worst of the physicality, the brunt of it all. He was the one who was like locked in the cage and, where they played, dog pound or whatever it was called. And so it's not surprising that he might seek out outlets that kind of are reminiscent of feeling pain and torture and abuse, because that's kind of what he's used to. And so I also wanted to kind of highlight that, along with all of the sexualized stuff that happens when Roman is like very stressed. We've seen that throughout the series, like in the way that he engaged with Jerry, that was, having someone berate him and talk down to him was actually a turn on, and how he was making all of these very, inappropriate jokes about Shiv being pregnant and seeing, Marcia at the funeral. Like he really doesn't have like sex, intimacy, emotions are all wrapped up with pain. And so I also wanted to highlight that too.
Yeah. Oh, poor Roman.
I know. I'm worried about him. I was really worried. I really thought the end of days was coming for him.
Yeah.
Hope not.
I hope not. Hope not.
What else did you notice?
Yeah, well, in contrast to how Roman started out the episode and ended the episode, Kendall started the episode really insecure and lost again, like we saw him in the prior episode when Rava said she and the kids were leaving the city and she was taking them, and he like quote unquote like threatened her, but in his very undertoned Kendall kind of way that like doesn't really come off very aggressive or authoritative.
She was like, all right, Kendall, sure. Like she didn't take him seriously at all.
She didn't, but she knows him. She knows that he will say things and not actually follow through with them. So that was the beginning of the episode, Kendall. And then he really triumphed, I mean, in taking over the eulogy and, supposedly just saying it on a whim, not really planning that out. Those beautiful words. I mean, that was incredible, the way that he was able to articulate all of that and what he was able to say in terms of, this is my dad, this was who he was. And like what Uncle Ewan said was true, and this is also true. Mm-hmm. And so he bridged the two kind of Logans together, that like, whereas Roman was going to just put his dad up on this pedestal in a complete opposite way. It's almost like if Ewan was the emotional mind and Roman was the rational mind, that he was just going to state out every fact about his dad, and Ewan just pulled from his experience of having this terrible relationship with his brother and how he viewed him, that Roman was the wise mind, and he pulled the two together and was able to really navigate that in that both and kind of way. And yeah. I was having a lot of empathy for both Kendall and Roman, and even Shiv as well. Who knows what was in Connor's speech, but how difficult it is to eulogize someone who you have a complicated relationship with, or maybe isn't, a saint, and how to kind of do them justice and how like, and still be like authentic. Cause it wouldn't have, I mean, if Roman did go up there and basically talk about how great his dad is, like that would have been a lie. I mean, it would have been partially true, but like everyone in the room would be like rolling their eyes. And so it's hard to strike that balance. But yeah, somehow, some way, Kendall was able to
also what I appreciated about Kendall was that he owned, like, yeah, I've said these things. The things that Ewan said, I've said them about my dad. So he owned that. It wasn't like he pretended like they had a great relationship or that everything was great too, which I also appreciated. But yeah, he pulled these like beautiful, flowery words out of thin air. He was great. He like literally like rose to the throne, like ascended. Coronation may have happened, you know, in London, but like it just happened at the funeral of Logan Roy.
Yeah. What about you? What else did you see?
So I just wanted to kind of highlight, there's been a lot of speculation throughout this whole series about like who is capable of taking Logan's place, who is most like Logan. I've at times said that I think Roman's most like Logan, but this episode, it occurred to me that the person that's most like Logan is Tom.
What?
And so Tom is in a it's like Tiananmen-esque is I think how he describes it. I mean, the world is literally on fire. His job is like serious. He like runs a news channel. He has been up for days basically at this point covering the election. And Tom, who is admittedly kind of money hungry, power hungry, declines going to the funeral where he has kind of like this vanity position of being, you know, front right wheel guy, also being in this room with so many powerful and influential people. And he doesn't go because he needs to work. And it made me think of the very first episode of the series where it's Logan's 80-something birthday and Kendall leaves work to go to Logan's birthday. And Logan's like, why are you here? You had a deal to do. Like, you had to be at work. And it just made me think that Tom made the choice that Logan would have made. Like, screw the funeral. Like, work is more important. Tom also comes from more humble beginnings. So, like, he understands, like, the value of hard work, the value of money. Like, and he's, you know, he loves money. Like, that is what drives him, similar to Logan. And he is very cutthroat. He will do what he needs to do in order to gain more power, gain more money, but he actually does work. I mean, no one could say Logan didn't work hard. I mean, he was like a brute and, you know, a tyrant at times, but like he was in there working. Like, he clearly values work, and Tom does too. So I think that there are so many parallels, you know, as much as like Tom gets crapped on by everybody, including me at times. Like, this episode, I was like, whoa, this is a big deal. And so I was just kind of drawing those comparisons that he's vicious. He is also very capitalistic. He understands like not being completely entitled and all of that stuff. So I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, you make a great argument, and like, I can't help but see those things too. I mean, you're so right. I think also, I mean, also his marriage is falling apart. You can add that in there. That's like Logan.
Yeah. His, you know, 2 wives and 2 mistresses were front and center at the, so
that was an interesting bridge that I don't even know their mom's name. Yeah, Caroline. Thanks. Interesting way to get Carrie up there. This is my Carrie. But yeah, wow. I mean, I think we've also seen Tom become more vicious, and like, yeah, like you said, he chose Logan before, and now he's choosing the work. And that is, you're so right. That is what Logan would do. And before, he was really choosing Shiv, and now he's choosing the work. So I think we've seen that develop over time too. But wow. So
yeah. I mean, not that I want him to be CEO of Waystar Royco or Gojo Waystar or whatever the heck is going to happen with that deal. But I think he's the most Logan-like in a lot of ways. way more equipped than any of the kids for sure. But he's still kind of like a dope and no one really respects him, which is very different than Logan. Like Logan commanded respect. So I don't know. But yeah.
Okay. Well, since you just shocked me, I'm going to shock you with another thing that I wanted to bring up. Empathy alert. Empathy alert, according to Shiv.
Okay, wait, explain it to me, because I couldn't stand her again. Well, I had a little bit of empathy. I'll share why in a second, but go for it.
Okay, Shiv told her brothers that she's pregnant. Well, now she's told Tom, she's told her brothers, and then her mom just knew. She saw and she knew. And for a mom that's been absent for a very long time in her life, I'm not sure how that really...
Mother's intuition? ?
Yeah. Anyway, not one of these people have asked her how she is. Not one of these people have... I mean, she got a congratulations from Kendall, I think, kind of. And yeah, obviously Roman made all those jokes, those gross jokes. And Kendall wanted to confirm, is it Tom's? Obviously, we saw what happened when she told Tom last week, but I don't even remember what her mom had to say, but it wasn't congratulatory. It wasn't concern. It wasn't anything that somebody that's telling somebody they're pregnant for the first time wants to hear. And so, yeah, I was feeling really, really terrible for her, and how that must be that not only has she been going through this for, I want to say almost 20 weeks, because in that episode with the where she talked to the doctor, she was going to have her 20-week scan coming up, and not much time has passed. So she's been going through this for months, like almost 5 months, and alone. And so just imagining what that's been like for her to have this secret and then to reveal this secret and not receive what she really needs. Like, not only does she need comfort because her dad just died, but she needs comfort because she's going through this huge life change, and no one's recognizing that.
Right. Well, and on top of that, this is where I had empathy for her and just felt like angry at, like, not at being a woman, but like feeling frustrated about like what comes with being a woman, which is that when, Matsson noticed that she was pregnant or heard that she was pregnant, it's like thought of as like a demerit. And she basically, what did she say? Like, don't worry, like, it's not going to impact me. I'll have a 36-hour maternity leave. Like, and I know, I mean, maybe she was serious, but like that is a pressure that women feel because, like, I mean, you're pregnant. Like, I don't know if you can relate to that even more than I can as someone who's not. But just this idea that her being pregnant makes her not eligible for, like, also wanting a career, also being able to advance in her career, like, kind of disqualifies her. I was feeling so frustrated by that. And that and I think with her mom, she was basically saying, like, yeah, I'll just do it the family way. Like, I'll just, not see the kid, basically. And it just, that feeling like you need to make a trade between being like a present mother and being present in your career, and just was so evident in the episode. And that's what I felt frustrated for, and empathy for Shiv.
Yeah. And you don't like it. And whether or not she meant it, right? Like, just the fact that she felt like that's what she needed to say, both Matsson and her mom, because that's the relationship. That's the way to keep the relationship afloat. That's the way to keep this going, is to make that claim. And
right. And it is the way to keep it going, that it being these horrible parent-child relationships where the children and parents are so disconnected. Yes, you're right. That is the way to keep it going. Perpetuate it.
So definitely was feeling for Shiv there. But why were you hating on her this episode?
Because I feel like last episode, she was all high and mighty on top of Moral Mountain about how this decision to basically make a call for Mencken or support Mencken was the worst thing for the world. And then this episode, she's like, oh, hey, like, if it's Mencken, like, I'm going to make it work for me. Like, I'll do whatever I need to do to like make it work. And so I just felt like she's so opportunistic. Like, I just don't believe a word she says. She's fake and inauthentic and all of that stuff. And so I just like I knew last week she was full of shit. Like when she was like talking about democracy and like bad things happening and all of that. But like, here you are less than 24 hours later, completely playing into this, fascist that you like can't respect. So that annoyed me. And maybe this is unfair. Maybe this just speaks to my bias, but I also didn't think I felt like her going up to say her quote unquote eulogy was not to let herself process, but it was a move. It was a move she was making to also be seen in that light, and because you couldn't let Kendall have it all. So that also annoyed me.
Yeah, it seemed like a very oddly punctuated eulogy. Like his just like out of the park. And she's like coming in with this extra added thing that no one needed.
Mm-hmm. No.
Except her. And not in the way that you're saying would have actually helped her, but in a way that, it plays.
Mm-hmm. It does. It plays. And she did in her eulogy, like make a reference to like her dad not being able to, I think the line was like, keep a whole woman in his head. Like he didn't know like what to do with a daughter, basically. And so again, it all that narrative of being kind of a woman in this world was like very evident in this episode as well, but could have done without it, Shiv. So next week is it.
I know. Now I'm kind of sad.
I'm sad. It's an hour and a half.
Oh, is it? I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Did you watch the preview?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know what to think. I can't even make a prediction. I have no idea.
No, I'm so happen.
But it did make me want to. I love how they like spliced in the intro, which I never watch. I always skip over it.
I love the intro.
I'm gonna go back and watch it. And like,
it was like White Lotus. I just like had to watch. It was like this little like hypnotizing thing.
Oh, I have to watch it now. So yeah, that's it. Well, I guess we'll be figuring out what the heck happens.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think something bad's gonna happen?
I don't know. You do.
I do. I have a sense that something bad's gonna happen. Like it's definitely not getting tied up in a bow.
Yeah.
I hope we get some ending, like not like a Sopranos, like non-ending ending. Like we get an ending. That's what I'm really hoping for.
And one that doesn't mean like we're making a movie now.
Yeah.
Like let's just wrap it up, folks.
Yeah, let's wrap it up in like a satisfying, but not like beautifully tied way.
Right. That would make
sense. That's so much to ask.
So we all want.
So yeah, we'll be back next week with the final episode of Succession. So we'll see you then. And please let us know what we should be reacting to when Succession ends next week. We want to know. Let us know in the comments. All right. We'll see you next week. Bye.